Awesome. Check. Awesome. I hope everyone's had a great lunch today and is all set for the next 20 minutes. We'll be delving into UX of the space. So this talk is not for any specific role in the space, but rather if you are a builder building tools that the end users enjoy, this talk's for you. A little bit of background on me. I've been designing the space for more than 3 years and have worked with some really cool and interesting projects across the domain. So as for the agenda of this talk, we'll start with the state of UX in Web3, what it is like right now. And next up, I'll go through 3 of my case studies super quick. We'll see what the problems were, what solutions we came up with, and also the impact it had on the product. So next up, we'll discuss what the problems are with the current workflow and how it is not designed to yield good results and discourages iteration, and also some solutions to that. We'll end with some actionable steps and some Web3 UX principles everyone here can take as a takeaway from this talk, sort of. So yeah, let's get started. The promise and challenge. So Web3, as we all know, holds a very decentralized approach to the product, right? And its own complexity is a barrier to its own mainstream adoption. So there's always new developments happening, there's always new technologies coming up, but its own complexity deters many potential users, and that's been like the sort of theme for the last 3 years in the space I've been. And this is something I've noticed across the projects, is distilling it down into 3 main big points is there's always onboarding processes that are complex, the interfaces which are confusing, and the feedback mechanisms are poor. And even though the potential of impact with UX is huge, there's only so much UXing we can do on the technical blockchain level. So stuff like seed phrase, transactions, and gas fees, there's not a lot of designing that can really help improve the experience. But when it comes to product level, the potential of impact is massive. Because the core idea of the product level decisions remain the same as Web 2 is, are you making the product useful? Are you making it according to what the user wants? Are you making it intuitive? So quick case studies based on something we discussed in the last slides. First one was an anonymous DeFi protocol I was working with, and it was causing 60% drop-off rate. Some issues we identified were the KYC process they were doing was very, very complex, and the instructions to go through those processes were very, very unclear as well. And the interface was termed intimidating more than one time. So the solutions we did to overcome these were we broke down the KYC process into much smaller, much more manageable steps. So instead of dumping all of the information to the user all at once to go through it, we broke it down into multiple smaller manageable steps. And we also progressively disclosed all these steps to the user to guide them through the task. Also, a big thing that helped was we added tooltips or educational resources throughout the product to better guide the users because the product was kind of big and deep. So there had to be certain educational tooltips that had to be throughout the product to really help them navigate. And the outcome was that we reduced the drop-off rate by a really decent 40% just by doing these for very simple UX changes. Next up was a charity NFT marketplace we were working on a couple of years ago. And it was found that users often abandon the transactions midway. So the purchase flow was really, really complex for some reason, even though it's sort of figured out already, but they made it very complex for some reason. So the issues were the navigation was complex. There was a lack of transaction and transaction transparency in the purchase flow, and the error handling was very, very poor. So the solutions we came up with were, again, same as the DeFi one, we broke down the big process into smaller manageable steps. So we also included real-time updates and confirmations throughout the steps they went through. We overhauled the error messaging system to not include a lot of technical jargons, but use user-friendly and concise, messaging, and used indicators throughout the product to like actually tell them what's going wrong and how to actually overcome that. And we also did user testing sessions, which is really, really important after you publish anything to kind of see the impacts you've had are actually working or not. And outcome was really good as well. We improved the purchase completion rate by about 30%, and later on when we did the surveys, it showed a really significant increase in user satisfaction and confidence in getting the NFT. Third was a wallet app we were working with. The issues we identified were their security settings were very, very overwhelming, so users often felt very confused and often didn't even know what to like really do with the app. And also the lack of user education because they were targeting a lot of Web2 users as well, but didn't really do something that helped bridge the gap. And also absence of interactive and accessible educational resources. They didn't want a static help section. They wanted something that really helps them to know the app better as they continued using it. Solutions where we, again, used plain language and visual cues in security settings. We did away with all the technical jargons and the big words. We gave them a guided walkthrough and with educational prompts throughout the app. And it seemed to do a lot of wonders because now users knew what to really expect from the app and just do well with it. And also, we integrated a security dashboard with a clear indicators of what their security status is and if something's going wrong or something they need to do about it and some steps to do it right then and there in their security dashboard. And outcome was that it increased engagement with those specific security features by 50%, and also they started getting less and less of those help support queries. So yeah, it offset off really well. Now, even with these things, we still need better collaboration because a good design isn't really just responsibility of designers. The devs, the users, and designers need to come together in order to create something that the end users enjoy and make sure that all the perspectives are heard when it's still in the development phase. And this is the thing I notice with a lot of projects even now is the current workflow. It's a very linear thing that the development happens, smart contracts done, audits happen, then there's a focus on design, which poses a problem because changing the smart contract is like a very costly and time-consuming thing. So iteration isn't really possible when you know the user feedback later on. So implementation of research finding is very, very difficult because since it's a very sequential nature of workflow, because the development precedes design, so it depends on the completion of the previous phase, which in turn keeps making the product build time longer, and iteration isn't really possible there. The ideal workflow is that UX research really here is a big superpower, and the key is to get design in the room early, not as an afterthought, because when it's there before, devs can get involved with the design as well and get to know the design rationale and collaborate well with on the whole product level of things, right? And also they can flag out any technical limitations very early on. And still at this stage, design is pretty cheap as compared to like doing 6 months of Solidity and then finding out this is not something really what the user wants. So yeah, involving devs in the design process is a really key thing that helped a lot of projects I worked with early on. Now this is what I call the pillars of iteration. It's basically measure is getting deep insights into what your user wants, what their pain points are, what can really help them overcome these pain points. Next up is to usually directly communicate with the user and knowing these issues firsthand. And third is when we have all these data and insights, is to know, is to start iterating over the design on the product level of things. So quick actionable steps from here is to prioritize UX from the start, get design in the room early on, not as an afterthought, and implement a really good feedback mechanism, because this is the whole basis of iteration is you get feedback from your users and iterate it early on. And third is to foster collaboration, a better collaboration with everyone involved. So isn't really just a priority of a designer to get everything from get-go, but once everyone's involved, the lives become much more easier. Some Web3 UX principles I'd like to end with as takeaways is always prioritize the needs and preferences of user, is that users are at the should be at the middle of every design decision that's taken. Don't reinvent the wheel, is that of course the space is always changing, and there's like this need of creating new paradigms and interfaces for everything, but there's a lot of big companies now out there with a lot of resources and a lot of money doing things and like managing things, coming up with things and testing it. So make sure to keep an eye out on that and see what's working, what's not, and kind of use their resources and money. And of course, designing for trust and authenticity is at the base of the space, because we are basically managing users' assets, data, and everything. So it should be kept in mind that the trust and authenticity should be displayed through UX design in the products we do. And of course, security and transparency, because Web3 should be focused as well. All right, so I think we are at the end of this talk soon enough. I'd like to end with this quote by Ben Schwabstein, which really is a very central part of this whole ecosystem when it comes to UX, is amazing UX does not really make your product valuable, but bad UX can make any product useless. Thank you. If there are any questions, or if you want to come talk to me, just find me around, walking around in the conference, and hit me up.
Yes, so if there's any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Yes.
Thank you for the talk. You mentioned on one of the slides that one of the challenges is the fact that smart contracts are immutable, right?
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, like, why is this such a huge issue? Because like in my mental model, smart contract design is like a few levels of abstraction below compared to what the user actually wants.
Yeah.
So if I want to implement a DEX, for example, there's only so many design choices that I have to make on the smart contract level, and how to present this to the user is kind of a separate problem, at least in my mind. I'm just wondering what's your opinion?
No, that's really a good question, actually, because the whole basis of this was that user research is really a superpower, because a lot of times what happens is when you are done with everything, that is when the design is thought of by the people usually, because the space still is largely developer-led, and design is just an aesthetic thing right now. So just doing your research and just thinking as much as possible of what the user might want and coming up with prototypes early on, because it's still then pretty cheap as compared to doing it later on, is the key. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Do we have more questions in the audience? Feel free to raise your hand. Don't be shy.
No questions.
I guess we can wrap it up. Thank you, Sundaram.
Thank you.
Give it up for Sundaram once again.